Current and future dads, welcome to Dad Dare. This is the very beginning of a series that we are doing where we talk with other dads who have gone before us, who have different experiences, and to glean wisdom off of their life experiences from being a dad to help us become and be the best dads that we can be. I am privileged today to be accompanied by my brother, Jake. And Jake and I are best friends. We definitely grew up together and we have a lot of different life experiences. However, our lives have taken some different paths, and so we have different experiences. So Jake, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'll kind of explain what we're gonna talk about today.
Yeah, I'm Jake, Cody's brother, like he said. I have a beautiful wife, Sarah, and we have a little 2-year-old girl, another little one on the way, and so I've got the privilege to be a dad for 2.5 years. I work for a ranch, do a lot of ranching type work, and I also guide hunts and do farming, and so that's what I do as an occupation, is live in the outdoors and hunt and work cows and farm hay, and yeah. About me.
And we actually have your daughter sitting right here on the couch, and she's hanging out, and so she might come over here during our time, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
So our conversation can be really relaxed. What I really hope for these times is to just kind of glean wisdom off of my guests, to try to learn more about what it's like to be a dad, and then specifically from your perspective, what are some things that you've learned, maybe some recommendations you'd put out there to people watching or listening. Usually there are specific topics that are related to your life that would be unique to other guys out there. I'm sure that there are a lot of different pieces in there that we could use as a metaphor, or use as with this experience that you have in your life, how does that impact you as a dad, and what are some things that you've learned from that? And since this is really the beginning of me interviewing people, I wanted to just kind of explain the logo of Dad Dare a little bit, and that might tie into a topic that we could discuss.
Yeah.
So we just got the logo finished. I'm super excited about it. The symbol on top is a D that's also a swirl. Dad Dare, we have these two words that start with D. So I wanted 2 different D's in the logo, and then we have them intertwined artistically, and then there's an arrow that goes through these 2 D's, and it makes it look like a number of different things. One, it makes it look like the D's are bows, and they're actually shooting the arrow. The symbolism that there's 2 of them, I would say that the best dad is accompanied by the best mom. Ideally, we obviously have a lot of different familial situations out there. If you give like a perfect picture, in my mind, it would be a father and a mother working together as a team to shoot this arrow. So the arrow represents children, and the symbolism in that is that you're crafting this arrow, you're building it, you're putting the fletchings on there, you're putting the head on there, and the shaft, and making sure that it's strong enough, but it also bends a little bit, and you put this arrow together, and then you draw back and you aim at a target, and then you release. And typically that's right around 18 years old is when a child will become an adult. In different cultures it's a different age, but it just kind of represents that process. And so if you look at the symbol in the logo, it also looks like a target, the way that it swirls in. And so that's a little bit about the logo and how we came up with that. It's a connection to archery, and I know that you have a lot of experience with archery. You're a very avid archery hunter, but I would say you're a professional archery hunter because you're guiding archery hunts. I mean, you are. Like, if you compare it to other guys, like you're getting paid to go archery hunting, right?
Yeah.
So you do have a lot of experience that you could share. I don't know, have you ever thought about that? Have you ever thought about how those 2 are related?
Not a lot, and this is Cody and I haven't talked a ton prior to this about some of these details in the logo and this relation. So a lot of this is raw material that you guys are going to hear. But I think that's a really good analogy of parenthood, relating it to archery. And that makes a lot of sense because when you get into the nitty-gritty details of archery and bow hunting, you find that it's never ending, the depth of detail you can get into when it comes down to arrow build, bow build, things like that, because it's a sport that the most minute detail can play a really big part in accuracy downrange. And so that thought of, as an archer builds his arrows, he builds them to perfection for his bow and for how his bow is going to shoot and for what he's going to be shooting, what his target is going to be, and the distances he's going to be shooting. And yeah, you need a snack. And
if I remember right, you have built some arrows yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have. I haven't built wooden arrows, but I've built carbon arrows from more or less putting together the pieces, buying pre-built carbon shafts and going from there. But yeah, I think that's a great analogy to how parents spend time raising a child so that they can shoot them out into the world and kind of send them on their own path, their own flight. And I think there's a lot of depth here we can get into, and so we don't need to get too carried away. There's obviously aspects as far as, a kid will kind of choose his own journey and follow their passions. And so this isn't to say like parents should train their kids so strictly to do what they go on the path they want them to go on in life. There is a aspect of that child, following their heart and their own dreams and passions. But as far as getting into like morals, character, integrity, ethics, foundation principles of a human, there's a lot to be said about how a parent raises their child from a baby, will determine, or can determine, at least for sure play a really big part in the trajectory of that child's life. And it comes down to the even more detail than what you'd get into in building an arrow, that's for sure.
You kind of touched on this a little bit, and so the metaphor of of building the arrow, as any metaphor, would fall apart at some point, which I think you were getting at, and so we can really pick it apart, but it being a metaphor, like, it's not going to be a perfect picture, but there's symbolism in there that we can learn from. And then the other piece I wanted to throw out there is that at this stage in my life, I'm not a dad yet. However, I will be at some point. And so that's kind of this whole process as well with Dad Dare, is that I'm sharing my journey right now of how I'm learning and preparing to be a dad. And then as I become a dad, I'll continue to share how I'm learning and becoming the best dad that I can be. And so in no way do I want to come across as someone who is trying to say like, hey, I got this figured out, or I really want to have a posture of learning and listening, and I would say that any dad that probably sits with me and talks with me would say that they're continuing to learn as well. And it's hard to talk about a topic. This is something that I've learned so far. It's hard to talk about a topic that is so broad, because for each kid, each family, each dad, it's a different situation, and every relationship is a little bit different. Even with your kids, like, you know, each kid is going to be different from what I understand. You're looking at opinions and perspectives, and not saying that what we say or not saying that what I say or what whoever sits with me says is like that's how it should be for everyone, but just kind of take it as an opinion and glean off of it what you will, and then let the rest of it just kind of go, if that makes sense. So I definitely wanted to throw that out there towards the beginning here, just to kind of set a foundation of where I'm coming from, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think it's a really neat thing that you are starting this interview process in this channel before you have kids, because it shows the importance this topic has to Cody in his life, that his desire is to learn as much as he can and glean information off other dads as soon as he can before he even has his own kids. So I think there'd be an easy response amongst people to be like, oh, well, you don't even have kids, so why am I going to listen to you? And yeah, there's some weight there, but it's more about listening to the people that you'll be interviewing, who are going to be all walks of life, understanding that you're coming into this space out of humility, wanting to learn, not coming to tell viewers what's right and wrong. And like, 'cause I could fall into the same thing. Like, I've only been a dad, a few years, so I don't know nearly as much as the guy who's been a dad his whole life for 50 years. But you could be a dad a single day, and you've experienced experiences that a lot of other people haven't. And the fact of the matter is, every child is completely different. I may have only parented a couple years, but I may have experienced some things that are completely different than other parents who have been parenting for 30 years. Kids are so different, And so there's a lot of room for conversation in this space. There's a lot of things to be learned, even if you've been a parent for a really long time. So that'd be a good thing to keep in mind, is just maybe listen to these with an open mind and open ears, and just hear. That's what I'm excited about, is just to hear other people's perspectives, experiences, and hopefully I can learn more as well.
Yeah. Okay. That's all right. That's another part about kids that I'm continuing to realize, is that they interrupt, and that's just kind of how it goes. I've also watched different parents like interact with their kids differently when they interrupt, or how they're interrupting, or why they're interrupting. There's different like responses. But before this, Jake was like, he's here in town visiting. He's like, this would be a great time to film this video and do this conversation. However, his daughter was going to be present the whole time, and I was like, oh, that's fine. Like, I'd rather have it more real and authentic of like what this is actually like, than to try to just like make something up. So that's something I'm trying to do as well with these conversations, is give you just like a real raw look at people's lives, at dads' lives, and to let you hear where they're coming from and what they've been through. And there's a variety of different dads on my list that I'm excited to talk to. And I do think it'll be really cool to talk to dads from different professions, dads that have different jobs. Our work life takes up the majority of our time, and it really impacts who we are, and it impacts how we relate to other people, whether we think about that or admit it or not. I think it'll be really interesting to hear from guys that are working all sorts of different jobs, and to see how that impacts them being a dad. And there are a lot of unique situations out there as well. Dads who have either lost kids, or different stories of guys that I think we can learn from. Ideally, you would look to dads that really have been remarkable and that have made a huge impact on their kids, and to ask them for their perspective. However, I do think there are some situations where people have maybe made poor choices, like multiple poor choices in their life, and you can still learn from, they're at a place now where they've matured and they've grown, and they can reflect on those poor choices, and we can learn from that. And I think that's really what wisdom is you're learning from somebody else's success or somebody else's mistake. And if it's a mistake, like, hopefully you're learning it so that you don't have to go and make that mistake as well. Do you have anything that's kind of on the tip of your tongue or on your heart that you'd want to include today?
Just a refresher that I got to experience this morning / advice for dads would be, one, giving mom a break every once in a while, and two,
that's what you're doing right now, right?
That's what I'm doing right now. And two, spending intentional time with your child. So this morning, my wife went with her mom out to run some errands and do a little shopping. So I got to hang out with our daughter all morning. And so we went on a date and got some hot chocolate and some treats. And then we ran some errands. And the time just sitting in a booth at a coffee shop sharing a scone it just hits you as a dad, like, how precious that is. And it was just like overwhelming how much I love that, when to most people that'd just be a simple moment, a forgettable moment. The more times I do that, the more time I take half an hour to go just sit and be with my daughter. When she's older, she's going to look back on her childhood and remember all those times that her dad just spent one-on-one time with her. And so it's two-part there. You're doing your wife a favor, which she really appreciates, and you're storing up those little moments in that fatherhood bank with each child that is going to play a really big part in that kid's life when they're older. And so those times that you have one-on-one with your kid, I guess I'd say don't take them for granted. Don't oversee that as just time passing by, and don't take it for granted, but instead take advantage of it to make eye contact with your kids and be intentional. And even if it's 30 seconds, if you do that frequently, it's just exponential the way that it affects your relationship, I think, with your child and with your spouse. So that's what we get to do this morning, is just eat snacks and have treats. And then we walked around and saw a cow, and which Callahan loves cows. We live on a ranch, and so whenever we get to see a cow, she loves it. And then we walked through the pet store, and it was just like the perfect.
She gets to go and check the cows with you.
Yeah, a lot of days she asked to go check the hay or check on the cows.
Or see the horses.
Yeah, or see the horses.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's something. I think just being intentional to make those little pockets of time frequently with your kid, just one-on-one. Or right now, obviously tomorrow, she's probably not going to remember it, but she might. But if I do that frequently enough as her dad, she'll remember her childhood as me being present and intentional and caring about her and spending one-on-one time with her.
Yeah, that's great, man. I really feel like you guys are doing a great job, and it's been fun to watch you as my brother, to just watch how it's been for you guys and been able to learn from that. What was it like becoming a dad before me, being my younger brother. He also got married before me too.
Yeah. I don't know, that's something I've thought about, but I don't think those thoughts had maybe a lot of weight behind them. And to me, more or less, we were at just kind of like different places in life.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's just where Sarah and I were, and you and Taylor had a different journey. And, you know, we're still living in the same moment, so it's not like we're ahead of you because we have kids first or we got married first. It's like that's just what we chose to do at that point in our life, and you guys were choosing to do something else. And so there's like, I don't know, I experienced envy behind not getting to go on the year-long adventure and like travel the country, but we're also spending this time getting to experience our kids' childhood. And so to me, I don't think there's any big advantages or disadvantages to having kids really early or late, or having kids or getting married really early or late. You know, your life is your life, and I think the Lord has a plan for everybody's life, and if we're just being obedient and listening to what the Lord has in store for us, then that's the best life we could live, and we get to experience the joys and the blessings that the Lord throws our way when we just be obedient and, you know, go the ways that we're feeling called.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. As I continue to talk to other guys, I'd love to have a conversation with you again. Like, I would love to dive more into archery. There's a lot of topics that we could cover, and so in the future I'd love to have more conversations with you. And as we're wrapping this one up, what would you maybe suggest, or any ideas that you have for me as I go out and glean wisdom off of other guys, and kind of create this experience for people to watch or to listen to come along the journey with me, whether you who are listening or watching, whether you are already a dad or you hope to be a dad soon. You know, do you have any thoughts as far as that goes?
I think a really big one, and the first one that came to my mind is, which is good advice to always hear and be refreshed on, is just try to enter into a space like this with no judgment. That's something Sarah and I have talked a lot about, especially regarding parenting, is before we were parents, it was a lot easier to cast judgment on people in circumstances regarding parenthood or kids. And now that I'm a dad, man, there's no judgment for any parent. That was kind of a reality check, a gut check for us. Not that we're super judgmental people, but it's just easy when you see the parent in the grocery store whose kids are just acting out and they just kind of snap, they hit their edge, and they like react in a way that you don't think is appropriate, to be like, oh geez, like, I don't know, cast some sort of judgment. Yeah, so I think just being judgment free going into a time like this is really beneficial, because every parent is in a different walk of life. Every kid is completely different and needs to be parented different ways. And so I think the more judgment free we can be when listening to other people's experiences or advices, the more we can draw out of what that person has to say, and the more we can learn. Whether it's things that maybe you don't agree with or you do agree with, either way, being as judgment free as you can is definitely a more beneficial attitude to have when listening to other people's stories, experiences, advices. Because you never know sometimes when things will change in your life, and all of a sudden you'll find yourself being in a similar situation to that person. You're like, oh man, this is way different than I thought it was going to be. And this is way harder than I thought it was going to be, or I can't believe this person actually was able to do this because I have no idea how to do this. You can never fully walk in somebody else's shoes. So yeah, I think being judgment free is a good piece of advice to keep in mind.
Yeah. All right. So if you want to continue to follow my journey of gaining wisdom, becoming and being a dad, feel free to follow us, whether you are listening or watching, wherever you're at. Just do what you can to follow along. And we're excited to see where this goes. And we're excited to, I'm excited to grow myself, and I'm also excited to share that with you so that you can grow and learn as well. And maybe there's a point where you'll be sitting here talking with me. And so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so we were just talking, and we thought it would be a cool idea to leave you guys with the dare at the end of each episode. And we would say our dare today is to try not to cast judgment on other dads, but to learn from their experiences. And then if you are currently a dad, we are daring you to go and have a date one-on-one with your kids, and to also see if you can give their mom a break. That'd be a great way to love your family. So I'm going to continue to dare you guys to be the best dads you can be, and we'll see you in the next one. Hats off to you.
Can you look at the camera?
Can you say
bye-bye?
Can you wave? 1, 2, 3. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.